Let's face it, Alabama is a political cesspool. We know this. And one of our Ask Alabama readers, Chris Smith, submitted a question that said, just how corrupt is Alabama in the grand scheme of political sleaze? There are a lot of ways we might be able to measure that using hard data or analysis, but instead we decided to go straight to the horse's mouth. We have experts here from New Orleans, from New Jersey, from Chicago, and while I'm not quite sure finding the horse's mouth in Chicago doesn't mean going straight into a mobster's bed, but we'll find that out later. But at any rate, we have these guys. We're going to give it a shot. We're going to debate it, and at the end, you tell us what you think. Not adhering to Southern hospitality, I'm going to go first and make the case for Alabama. I'm sitting here in this city in which the mayor is in prison for selling out his constituents, in which 6 county commissioners were convicted, some of whom were convicted for starting what became the world's largest municipal bankruptcy at the time. Thank you, Detroit, for taking that albatross off our back. In the last little more than a year, we have seen the heads of 3 branches of government in Alabama booted out of office. We had the lecherous governor who was convicted after attempting to cover up his affair. We have the Alabama Speaker of the House who was convicted on the ethics charges he helped to get passed, and we have the Supreme Court Chief Justice who was booted out of office not for the first time but for the second time for failing to follow federal court orders. So we have, interestingly enough, that Supreme Court Justice is now running for the U.S. Senate against the former Attorney General who got appointed by the governor. He was supposed to be investigating. I'm out of time, but that's the beginning. So now we go to that state that's 1/3 underwater and 2/3 under indictment, or maybe the other way around. We go to Tim Morris from NOLA.com.
Right. So first you have to realize that we don't talk about being corrupt. We talk about being colorful, which should tell you something about how we feel about corruption. So we start off with Huey Long. Huey Long inspired a novel, a Pulitzer Prize-winning novel, that is the essence of what corruption and abuse of power is in America. So when Woodward and Bernstein needed a title for their book about the worst corruption in American Washington's politics, they chose to take all the king's men and make it all the president's men. So we start with that. Then we have Earl Long, who is the original Love Gov. He didn't just have an affair. He had an affair with a Bourbon Street stripper very publicly. His family tried to get him committed into a mental institution. He pulled his strings. He got the right people, and he got out. And I haven't even come to Edwin Edwards yet, who was elected governor in 1991 with the slogan, "Vote for the crook, it's important," and everyone knew what that meant. So the rest of you guys, you're just doing variations on a theme. Louisiana, it's like the Lombardi Trophy. We have the Louisiana Trophy now, and it's retired it. You guys can try to vie for it, but we own it.
All right then. Not bad. Now we go to Jersey, where the sleaze just seems to wash up on the beach. Here's Sean Sullivan at NJ.com.
Yeah, so New Jersey, I would say, is a Russian nesting doll of political corruption. And what I mean by that is we have a long storied history of reformers and crusaders falling from grace. And so, we start with the story that's on everybody's mind in New Jersey lately. Just today that we are recording this, the last defendant in the Bridgegate scandal was sentenced on federal charges for the shutdown of one of the largest thoroughfares in the United States, the George Washington Bridge, which was done for political payback for a mayor who refused to endorse the governor. Now, Governor Chris Christie, who's at the end of his second term, was a crusading U.S. attorney who loved to put corrupt officials in jail, and he did that for 7 years as U.S. attorney. So you have the crusading U.S. attorney who unseated a Democratic governor on a platform of cleaning up Trenton, who then sees 4 of his close allies all plead guilty to or be convicted of federal corruption charges. Now, at the same time, we have a senator, U.S. Senator Menendez, who is sitting under indictment. About 2 decades before that, he was sitting in the witness stand wearing a bulletproof vest, testifying against his former mentor, Hudson County mayor who is accused of working with the mob to rig to funnel federal education funds and construction dollars into mob coffers. We have inspired popular culture. Our corruption has inspired popular culture, including The Sopranos, Boardwalk Empire, American Hustle. So I think that in the public's mind, New Jersey has inspired a whole lot of art around public corruption and graft. Also, if we're just talking in terms of a pure numbers game, we've got 565 municipalities. That's a lot of mayors to be on the take.
All right. And finally, we go to that godfather of corruption, the city with shoulders big enough to hold Blagojevich. We got Casey Toner in Illinois.
Illinois is awash in corruption. It is the land of Lincoln, and it's also the land of mobster Al Capone. 4 Illinois governors were sent to prison. More than 24 Chicago aldermen have been convicted of crimes, and recently the head of Chicago Public Schools pleaded guilty to corruption charges after bid rigging a $2.5 million contract. Congressman Jesse Jackson Jr., who tried to buy Barack Obama's Senate seat from Rod Blagojevich, the governor, also pleaded guilty to campaign finance fraud. So did his wife, who was a Chicago alderman and part of the same scheme. And it's worth noting that Jesse Jackson Jr., who was elected to the Illinois 2nd Congressional District, replaced Congressman Mel Reynolds, who left office in 1995, I believe, after he was being convicted of statutory rape. So there's plenty of bad things to go all around the great state of Illinois, and that is a badge that we are not proud to wear, but we wear it anyways.
All right, now let's just discuss it for a little bit. You guys talk about numbers quite a bit, but I would make the argument that numbers don't win this game. It's not the people who get convicted that count. It's the people that get away with it. And I would argue, in case you got a little experience here, I would argue that Alabama's good at getting away with it.
Yeah, that's because in Illinois, I feel like there's at least some level of transparency, and at least there's some commitment to opening up records. Whereas Alabama, where I worked for 2 years, everything was just under lock and seal at all times. And if you asked for any kind of record, anything from like a basic police report, they basically told you to stuff it. And I think a lot of things just kind of get swept under the carpet that way.
Yeah, like you say, we're talking numbers and we're talking this and that. It's the characters that's involved. It's the idea of people who change the national atmosphere. I mean, other than New Orleans, would you care about Louisiana at all if it weren't for the political figures that we produce and the news that we bring? So like I said, it's like everybody else is trying to jump on the bandwagon. And, Louisiana was founded in a land scheme. A guy named John Law floats a bunch of paper, creates one of the first big land bubbles in the history of the planet. And that's Louisiana, and we haven't changed much since.
Well, I gotta say, I'm sticking with the numbers argument here. You name a major city in New Jersey, and I will name you a mayor either who's been convicted or is under indictment. And the accusations and their response to the accusations are always pretty flashy, right? Just recently, we have I think the third largest city in the state, Patterson. We had a mayor indicted last summer, and just recently we had a fundraiser for the Mayor's Defense Fund on a yacht where a bunch of sitting politicians all showed up to raise money for his legal defense fund. So we've got it in every corner of the state.
That all sounds impressive, but we just had a legislator who agreed to plead guilty for taking money from coal companies through a bribe from some of the most powerful lobbyists to encourage the poorest residents in his district not to have their soil tested for pollution. So I would, some of our corruption is, some of it's maybe about money and other things, but some of it is just plain dirty. And I would argue that our problem is that our politicians keep going to jail, but the people who pay them keep walking away.
I want to add real quick that I think when we're talking about corruption, like many things, size matters. And in Illinois, it's not just governors and senators and congressmen and aldermen and mayors and city councilmen and Department of Transportation employees and so on and so forth. We actually had a guy that was third in line for the presidency, Denny Hastert, the former Illinois House Speaker who served, I think, from 1999 to 2007. And then just recently, he pleaded guilty to some financial charges involving hush money from some boy that he molested when he was a high school teacher. So, I mean, I think that there's, there's something to be said for the prominence of the office and the person that tries to get away with it.
That's all kind of ugly. It seems ugly to me that. So like in the 80s, before Edwin Edwards actually got convicted and spent 8.5 years in the federal prison, he had like 3 or 4 trials that he got off on. And in one case, it was found out afterwards that the jurors who were sequestered during the trial had stolen towels from the hotel. And Edwin says, a jury of my peers. This is what real corruption looks like.
All right, well, let's wrap it up. We got 15 seconds each to make our final point, and I will begin. I would say that in Alabama, we could talk about political assassinations or data from spreadsheets on convictions or witnesses who got a shotgun blast to the face. But I think the one thing that stands out to me most about corruption in Alabama is represented in the former mayor of Birmingham, Alabama, who decided before he went to prison that it was time for Birmingham to have a sackcloth and ashes ceremony to humble itself before God, because we just needed to be humble. So he put on his burlap bag for the sackcloth and ashes ceremony, but didn't take off the Rolex he got as a bribe. So that sums up Alabama, though. Our corruption isn't just corruption, it's holier than thou, too. Go ahead, New Orleans.
So, I mean, I'm back where I started from. The novel that defines political corruption in America is based on Huey Long. For years, decades after that, Huey Long's, first off, we have not found his deduct box in which he was taking money from every single employee in the state. We do have New Orleans has a mayor that's still in prison right now. We have a member of Congress who got the longest sentence ever. So, I mean, this is. I appreciate what you guys are saying, appreciate what you guys are doing, but Louisiana has it, from the colorful standpoint, hands down.
So in 1985, a state lawmaker by the name of David Friedland disappeared. He was basically awaiting sentencing for taking kickbacks from the Teamsters Union in true New Jersey fashion. He was declared dead after he disappeared in a scuba accident in 1985. 2 years later, federal investigators found him in the Bahamas running one of the most successful scuba enterprises in the region, and hauled him back to New Jersey to serve out his prison sentence. So I would say in New Jersey, our corruption has an entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah, you mentioned things that happened back in 1985 and Huey Long, but Illinois is to the point where one of the sleaziest fictional characters in television history is based out of Illinois, and that is Saul Goodman from Breaking Bad, everyone's favorite, drug money lawyer. So yeah, I mean, while y'all are out there, pulling your misdeeds, we're on Hollywood.
All right, guys. Well, I respect your use of fictional characters down here in Alabama. We'd like to keep it real. But I appreciate it. I appreciate all of you. We know from now live in, for journalists, a target-rich environment. So good hunting.